Hello, everyone, and welcome to VVOP, the Value Driven Ownership Program, a deeper dive. Today, we will be taking a deeper dive into gross margin, part one of a four-part series examining the key assessment factors involved in doing a valid feasibility analysis. Why are we starting with gross margin first? Why is it so important? Well, because it's the starting point for pricing your product or service in order to maximize business performance. I'm Debbie, a certified SBDC advisor at the Colorado Small Business Development Center under the SBA. I'm also a former business owner myself, a former CFO for multiple startups in the Silicon Valley, and a CPA with a master's in finance. And I'm here today to help you understand the most important business profitability metric right at the top of your income statement: gross margin. Okay, technically, gross margin represents the percent of total sales revenue that the business earns after incurring the direct costs related to producing the goods and services. The higher the percentage, the more the company retains on each dollar of sales to service the other costs and debt obligations in the business. Revenue minus direct costs equals gross margin. But let's take a look at this term from a different point of view. Let's talk about it in terms of pricing, the beginning and the essence of pricing a product or service. Gross margin is all about how to price your product or service competitively, using a process called benchmarking, whereby you compare your business performance to a predetermined standard established by industry competitors and the overall industry. Competitor information is generally only available if your competitor is a public company. That is, the company's stock trades on a stock exchange. Just do a search on the internet for public companies similar to yours and look for the annual report called a Form 10-K. It may be called something else if you are searching for an international exchange company. With respect to industry data, IBISWorld is a widely used resource by professionals in places like the Silicon Valley. It has a wealth of information in it, useful for business planning, but it's rather expensive. Many SBDC centers have this resource. Sometimes you can find it at a library, especially in a college or university library. But there are many other data sources, so do some homework. You need this important information because it will help you find a baseline to establish a sales price. Right now, let's look at how to find gross margin data in IBISWorld, a valuable industry report published 1 to 4 times per year based upon how frequently market conditions change. While there are many industry resources, IBISWorld is considered one of the best. Reports are found with what is called an NAICS code. Every industry has one. It stands for North American Classification System. You can easily find a code with an internet search. This is the report for coffee and snack shops in the U.S. And although it contains 60-plus pages of information, today we will focus on where the gross margin information can be found. You will find it on the Contents page. Select Key Statistics. Then go to the Industry Financial Statement on page 37. We're going to look at the income statement portion of this page down at the bottom. Note that total revenue is always the 100% baseline. Every other item is displayed as a percent of total revenue, like gross profit or gross margin. In this case, the 3-year average is 39.2%. So, what do you do with this information once you find it? Well, you do some benchmarking. You start by asking yourself, where are you on the sales price spectrum? You want to compare your gross margin to individual competitors and the overall industry. Are you high? Are you low? Or are you somewhere in between? If you are high, can you justify your price? Do you have a niche? And if you are low, should you increase your price? Or are you just where you should be? In between. Now that's what benchmarking is. But what exactly does gross margin mean? Big picture, gross margin is the dynamic of two critical factors: net revenue, total sales less discounts, returns, and allowances, and cost of goods sold, the direct cost of selling a product or service. Net revenue minus the cost of goods sold equals gross profit, the selling price of a product or service less the cost of producing it. Are you with me so far? Okay, let's talk about gross margin. A percent of net revenue left over after paying selling expenses. How do you calculate it? You take gross profit and divide it by net revenue. The end result is gross margin. It's a percentage. It's a ratio. The devil is in the details, my engineering husband always says, and he's right. The details are incredibly important. So, don't get lazy here. Put in the effort required to calculate a per unit estimate of the cost of your product or service. This cost will drive the sales price and, in the end, your profitability, your ultimate success. So, how does it work? First, you calculate the cost of goods sold, the direct materials and labor. Yes, you have to figure out the cost of grounds, water, cream, sugar, and the cost of a paper cup for 1 cup of coffee. You need to do something similar for the pastries. Then you have to calculate the labor involved in making the coffee and the pastries. Make a list of the labor steps and cost each step. You can use averages if averages make sense. That's a whole lot of work, I know, but the devil is in the details, right? Okay, what do you think the sales price might be? What is your local competition charging? What do you need to charge? Plug that in and then calculate the gross margin. Average sales price minus average cost equals gross profit. And gross profit divided by average price equals gross margin. And now, let's talk about cost of goods sold, variable costs that increase or decrease with sales. There is no cost of goods sold if there are no sales. These costs are generally reported in three categories: raw materials, input goods required to deliver a product or service, and labor, work required to deliver a product or service, and other direct costs, which may include shipping, packaging, fees, taxes, etc., both labor and supplies. Time to study some numbers now so we understand exactly how the gross margin calculation works. Gross margin benchmarking. Let's see how it works for robust coffee. First, let's take a look at the industry benchmarks using IBISWorld. The 3-year benchmark of 39.2%. The 5-year benchmark of 38.5%. And the 10-year one of 39.1%. This results in an average of 38.9%. Now, let's take a look at two individual competitors, publicly traded companies: Starbucks at 68.01% and McDonald's at 57%. This results in an average of 62.5%. Yes, it's a bit of a range between the industry and competitors, so we will look at the median of this range, the number basically in the middle, which is 50.7%. Okay, so how does robust coffee fit into all of this? Well, the robust gross margin is 54.5%. This is higher than the industry average by 15.6% and lower than individual competitors' average by 8%. I would call this result pretty much in between and amazingly close to the median. And now, your homework assignment. All right, it's time to take a look at your business now and do some homework. Remember, it's all about how to price your product or service so you can play in your market and be successful. Complete all the required information. Step 1. Do some benchmarking research. Use IBISWorld and see if you can find information for some individual competitors. Look for some public companies. Step 2. Calculate the cost per unit of your product or service, raw materials, direct labor, and gross margin. Use Excel. You can also look at the calculation for robust coffee in the feasibility model. Step 3. Complete a benchmarking test. Compare your company's data to some industry benchmarks and individual competitors. Step 4. Draw a conclusion about your pricing. Is it too high? Is it too low? Or is it somewhere in between? So, in wrapping it up, I'll ask you the question again. Why is gross margin so important? Well, Technically, it's the money left over after direct costs for producing and delivering a product or service to a customer. The money left over to pay for operating expenses, infrastructure, debt service, and owner compensation. More importantly, it's the starting point for pricing your product or service in order to maximize business performance. Two things: profitability and value. It's all about a selling price that makes you a whole lot of money. And that's it, everyone. The end of a deeper dive into gross margin, part 1 of a 4-part series examining the key assessment factors involved in doing a valid feasibility analysis. In part 2, we will focus on something called EBITDA, the value component of a business. How much is it worth? Often neglected, misunderstood, and rather abused. So, stay tuned, and I'll see you soon.